Good morning. Let's get started with our second and last panel today. These are the acceleration sessions related to the World Circular Economy Forum taking place at Cazoolo. I am Jorge Soto. I'm the head of sustainable development at Braskem, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. I'd like to say hello to those who are watching us online as well. This panel is going to be addressing the potential of packaging design to promote a circular economy. Packaging design, as everyone knows, is very important. Design is a word that came up a number of times in the previous panel. Design can impact up to 80% of the impact of products, even social impact. And I think this is a topic that we need to discuss with our panelists today. And we understand that at Braskem. This design lab was open in 2022, and it's looking for solutions in circularity, focusing on plastic, which is where we act, which is where we work. This has become more and more important in our business strategy. We understand that plastic waste is creating problems, so we need to manage these problems. We need to manage this waste. Waste management needs to be driven by business as well. And in 2018, we decided to have a circular economy department in every country we work. Back then, we had no ton made out of recycled material. And last year, we had 85,000 tons sold using recycled material. We want to get to 1 million tons by 2030. We understand there's a long way to go to achieve our goals at Braskem, but we understand that society has also got a long way to go to achieve their goals. We understand that talking about the subject will help develop each link in the chain, in the society, government, companies, non-governmental companies, scholars, and we can boost this discussion. And we know that the waste matter is not only plastic, right? But it's our focus here today. And to talk about how important design is, we're holding this panel, and it's a pleasure to be moderating it. I'd like to invite the Adalberto Maluf, the Secretary for Sustainable Development, Bruno Igel. He is the CEO of Wise Plásticos, and Henrique Pacini. He's an economist at the United Nations conference focusing on trade and circular economy. Can you please take the seat next to me? And last but not least, Severino Lima Júnior. He's a founding member, a waste picker, and the first president of the International Alliance of Waste Pickers. Please take a seat. Please take a seat. Let's try and have a dynamic panel here. I'll give each one the floor so that they can introduce themselves and the organization they are here to represent. But I would also like to start with a question. How big a role does design play in circular economy? Mr. Adalberto, Secretary, can you please be the first one to answer? I'd like to start off by thanking you for having me here at this debate. This is the last day of a very intense week. People from all over the world talking about circular economy. Circular economy is one of the main strategies to decarbonize the world and to increase efficiency in Brazil. The Ministry for the Environment and the Ministry for Finance have circular economy as a focus on the agenda. We had the World Circular Economy Forum this week, and our commitment to the Paris Accords also makes circular economy a central topic to us. And we need to think about circularity in every aspect, in transport, water, agriculture, and every other sector. Changing this model is something that we need to change.
Do PNUMA, né, de economia circular, praticamente todos os países já têm políticas, têm propostas.
So there were, there were several moves about the circular economy, and for Brazil, it's important to engage in this debate in relation to the current conditions. I led the ministerial group at the G20. We approved a document that was extremely interesting about the inclusive circular economy. My friend Severino was with me and Kalini that we had the launch. It was the first time in which we had two-way speakers speaking at an interministerial meeting together with many ministers. It was really something. And now we'll start negotiating with the Russians so that we can have a resolution. Also at the BRICS, we have a discussion on the circular economy with plastics ranking as one of the four priorities of the Brazilian presidency so that we can unleash the agreement for plastic pollution reduction. And Brazil is the fourth largest producer of plastics. We want to have this as a driver for growth. Everybody knows plastic is very important. It's everywhere. It's just everywhere. All you have to do is to look around you. We know how important plastic is, but from 2000 on, production has doubled, and unless something is done, will increase by threefold our production by 2060. And a lot of this is leaking into the environment and causing impacts in human health and biodiversity. We still don't know much about the concerning additives that are used in plastic. Brazil started last year the Brazilian inventory of chemical additives, and we are now finalizing the inventory with the participation of Abiquim. They were a great partner. They support us in two other projects. In the area of chemical management. We are also working to finalize the register of chemicals. And this, of course, will put us in a differentiated condition. And for the circular economy to really work, we'll have to change our modus operandi. We have always focus on the downstream in waste management. And everybody knows 27% of our waste goes to dumps. Last year, there was a huge decrease in the number of dumps. In the world, this is 38%. In Brazil, 28%. More than 70% of the dumps are located in cities with 10,000 inhabitants, 50% up to, and 72% have no solid waste management plans. And 84% of them do not charge any taxes to really make this sustainable. So it's not really easy to manage solid waste. Recycling is available in a very small percentage, even though regulation requires a larger number. The law with incentives to recycling, of course, requires 400 million at least. 25 projects were approved, most of them involving waste pickers and associations. Those were the best projects. So we feel that the context is favorable, that industry is taking ownership. Reverse logistics is growing significantly. We see more decrees, we see more accountability, more validation as well. This year, some reports were rejected, in fact, because they did not meet the requirements. The reverse logistics degree for plastic packaging has finally made advances and will be launched at the Environmental Week, with recycled content being required for all packaging. We see more recovery that was in the past 22% voluntary. Now the level is 35 going to 50, so the bar is being raised. Industry will have to invest, not only brand owners and manufacturers. The decree even involves resin manufacturers, the electronic market, and also environmental licensing is now linked to reverse logistics and also imports. We won't be receiving low quality plastics that we don't know where it came from and that has no recyclable content. Of course, this is not a non-trade barrier, but it's a focus. And downstream is not enough. It's not going to take us where we need. And promoting reuse systems and even remanufacturing and repurposing of those products will certainly help. But reducing the size of packaging, creating packaging that's more reusable and recyclable, this involves the change of colors and formulations and additives that are used in these plastics. All of this has to be led by the private sector. The government cannot tell you what to do. The government will just set the guidelines. We know how committed Braskem is in this area, with also providing biomaterials and green plastic, so that we will have a lower impact in CO2. I think that the use of PCR will expand as well. However, we need to focus on packaging redesign. Severino and I visited several co-ops. Today I'm going to visit a project of autonomous waste pickers in Glicério. But, you know, I just go to those co-ops and I see piles and piles of plastics and other materials, especially certain types of plastics that are not recyclable, as everybody knows. To make it clear, co-ops will be compensated by those who sell this to them. So if you have a credit, the co-op will call them and they will remove the materials, but they will have to be paid for it. And if you are one of the managers and you have somebody who just makes materials that are non-recyclable, this will create problems for you in the future. So, because otherwise you have to foot the bill as the managing body. So we imagine that manufacturers who sell products with non-recyclable packaging and that are not concerned with the color or type of labels, they will have a premium to pay to comply with the regulations, because the weight has increased tremendously. We think that we're just joking, but the numbers of recovery in 2025 have to be 2.5 times higher than in 2023. And everybody knows that in the Ministry of the Environment, they're very critical and harsh. And they count on 100% of the minister, of support from the minister and the secretary. What the technical area decides, it's set in stone. Don't even try to convince Marina da Silva of anything else. Okay, this is I think this is a very important report that you've given us. And, this report on reuse is very important. It's important to think how co-ops will engage and redesign of packaging and products to make sure that they are recyclable and reusable. It's something that cannot be put on hold anymore. Yes, precisely. The circular economy absolutely depends on the redesign of packaging so that they can be reusable and recyclable. Severino, I would like to turn the floor over to you. The secretary mentioned you because the role of waste pickers is really key. So could you please introduce yourself and talk about the alliance and the importance of design? Good morning, everyone. I am Severino. I am a waste picker. I've been a waste picker since I was 3 years old. I live in Natal, Rio Grande do Norte. This is my hometown. And today, unfortunately, something that was very organized with top-of-line selective collection, then a public manager just made a mess, and for 6 years now, our selective collection is now failing. We depend really on the authorities for anything we need to do. No matter how hard we work, and I can give you examples of this, unless there is a political will, we won't get anything done. We had a government that supported waste pickers, and now a new government came into office. They didn't even acknowledge waste pickers. Of course, in the election period, they always come and talk to us, waste pickers. So now speaking as a consumer and as a citizen, you should never get, for example, plastic bags at the supermarket. There's no need for it, for example, I'm a waste picker. I work with tons and tons of plastic bags. I'll never get one of those bags at the supermarket. Now, I will tell you a story. I think that only those of you who are older will understand. I remember a struggle we had with Coca-Cola. I'm outspoken. I will always call a spade a spade. Remember when Coca-Cola launched this beautiful bottle? It was kind of metallic and purple and red, and then it was completely not possible to recycle. There were 5 colors. It was great for arts and crafts. And I remember it was at the time when we were discussing the industry-wide sector, and everybody was saying horrors about this bottle. Finally, they discontinued that bottle when we showed bales and bales of that plastic because nobody wanted to buy it. We had to screen it. Color is important. Nobody's going to put green PET together with crystal or blue PET. So this is when we realize it's important to pay attention to design of packaging. Then Boticário, as you know, there is nobody here who will visit a cosmetics store and that will, I don't know, you buy something in a gray flask, but with some gold or silver. But who's going to pay the price for it? It's the environment, because it's difficult to recycle. So I accepted this invitation to speak because of this, because we are the ones who feel the brunt of this problem. I don't know how it works in other places of the world, but I'll never say to a housewife, don't, or somebody, don't use this because I am next to the dump. And it was the same with styrofoam. Another type of packaging that is terrible is this PET, PET layered packaging that is used for eggs. In the past, we used just cardboard boxes. It was much easier. So we are worried about this because when it's a co-op that is not properly managed, we'll end up with heap upon heap of packaging that is not usable. And besides that, it's important for us to find a use for those materials. So if you travel in Latin America, if you go to Colombia, come and talk to the Waste Pickers Association, which is our sister company. They use wood for everything. So now Colombia has the best model. We participated in a chamber meeting with the Chinese. They are asking us for innovations. There's another problem in Brazil. You have to be tough to survive as a Brazilian, because you get an idea immediately. A multinational such as Ambipar and another reverse logistics startup. Sometimes I run into those executives and also NGO heads, and I think, wow, they have a job because we exist. Waste pickers, all they do is show the numbers and they say, wow, my reverse logistics model is fantastic. But it's the waste pickers that are using the presses and marketing these materials. So that's what we need in the end. If you, as companies and organizations such as Abiquim and other entities, if you don't listen to the waste pickers, if you don't learn from us, well, we also want to learn from you. We got a proposal from the organization. They say, well, let's set up a company with the presses, with trucks. You're going to work in a cooperative, and I will give you 10%. 10%? No way. No, half and half. You get your funding, I get public funding, and then we can make a deal. But so in addition to providing materials to your company, I get only 10%. This is just unacceptable. And once again, it's about the government. The federation cannot order municipalities to do selective collection. In Natal Wells, we taught the mayor. We said, you spent 5 BRL in transportation with 80 BRL for the dump. So when you pay for a truck of 10 tons, you paid everything in, mixed up. But when you pay us, this will not go into the dump. But when you bury waste, you're spending. So this is when we started to understand and discuss with the government that the most important thing are numbers. We have several international projects underway. Today, when I sit together with the World Bank and IDB and Avena Foundation, most of the companies that provide funding, such as the Ford Foundation, they want to know how many tons we collect and how many pickers will work. That's why, this creates a dilemma. People think that we don't want technology. Of course, I want technology. I want a machine that will enable me to have, instead of 50 pickers, only 10 working. And in the meantime, the waste picker is going to care for his family. I remember, I used to get at 2 a.m. in the dump, and in the dumpster, and I worked and studied in the Bradesco Foundation. This is where I studied. And I was really embarrassed. I didn't want anybody to know I was a waste picker, because we're not waste pickers. We are pickers of recyclable materials. Today, we are more empowered and more prouder. You know, the names have changed. Even waste pickers is a name that's not accepted in English sometimes, but it was given by experts.
And I wanted the name to be shown. So, waste picker, catador de resíduo, because resíduo is a word that can mean waste and recyclable waste, but we wanted to come to a good term, like for the um, the World Labor Organization, the WLO. The Waste Picker organization had a good partnership with Casa Natura. Natura had created a house that had a very interesting social work. We also had a partnership with the Chile Waste Picker Association. Back then, people weren't concerned about packaging design. We wanted to know how the packages were made. Like, so, the bottle at Coca-Cola, how is the bottle made? So it's something that you need to first understand how things work, and then you can start raising questions or questioning how things work. Someone from Germany said, and they said, you put garbage in and money comes out the other end. I went to Paris the first time about 20 years ago with a project. I was involved with the COP in Paris. And then we found out that the incinerators and in Europe weren't doing well. And they wanted these things to be sold to or taken to Brazil free of cost, to say they were transferring technology. And when you look back on these stories, and I have to visit all of the members. I went to Turin recently, and I'm going to Africa next week to understand better and to exchange experience. And in Latin America, we have over 4,000 workers that are really organized. And there are 19 countries in Latin America. To have an association is really difficult. So a person from Rio Grande do Norte who doesn't speak Spanish or English, if you don't find synergy with companies and associations, then you can't do it. Coca-Cola implemented the bottle-to-bottle program in Mexico. And I said, wow, that's difficult. And that's when we learned how to work with the government as well. And now we work with international associations, with the World Labor Organization, UN, United Nations, and European Union. Sorry, I got carried on. I got carried away, pardon me. And when Aline put on the Lula sash, that lady had attended an event in Paris. And people were like, oh my God, a waste speaker in in Paris. And if they thought of me, I have spent 3 passports already. I've used them up. And I have had 2 visas granted to go to the United States. And people were attacked that way speaker who put on the presidential sash on Lula back when he took office. When I'm in the city, I work with my colleagues. We're almost at the same level as Mexico nowadays. We see that organized crime is starting to take over the commerce in trade in the landfills. So Severino, myself, I no longer am able to have these negotiations. I have to bow to the organized crime. Yeah, we need to think of the economic perspective as well. Social inclusion and development will allow for economic development. Bruno, you're the CEO of Wise Plastico, right? Can you share with us what your perspectives are? Thank you very much for having me, first of all. Well, this has been a very intense week. We've probably spoken at about 15 different venues this week. And I think this is very fruitful. We see a substantial change in how the mindset is changing. People are starting to understand circular economy. Hopefully, in 30 years' time, my company will be made useless because circular economy will have become natural to everyone. We see more and more structured, robust models. IFC said they lent millions of dollars to Magazine Luiza, Magalu, to invest in circular economy. Palm oil, people wanted to extinct it because it was a disaster for the environment, but now it's circular business and people are making a lot of money in an environmentally friendly way. So when you look back and you see investments that were made and what's happening now, you see people changing policies. Policies 30 years ago didn't even consider this, and now we see the think tanks looking at how they can change this. There are certain circularity indices going down, but we need to acknowledge that this is all very new. Even though circular economy is a 30-year-old term, people started understanding circular economy as a need when it comes to natural resources, carbon, all very recently. And I think we're making fast progress, and I think the future looks bright. My name is Bruno. I am the CEO of Wise Plásticos. This is it's an 18-year-old company, so we're teenagers, and we married Braskem 2 years ago. Now, Braskem is a partner in Wise, and our objective is to really scale up the business. Recycling is a very important aspect of circular economy. It's a lot easier to recycle than to create refills. But it's a lot harder when it comes to regulation. We do polyethylene and polypropylene, tons and tons a year. And we service fantastic brands. We replace virgin material with recycled material. So Unilever, L'Oreal, Natura. Natura really is a great example of effort and dedication, even without any need of any need stemming from legislation. We have a substantial presence in electronics with global brands too. And I think everyone has recycled materials at home, even if they don't know it. Of course, we want the brand to talk about it and consumers to be aware of it. But we know that what will help scale up the business is having recycled material without increasing costs and without changing the consumer journey. That is the quick model, and that's what we seek to achieve. Now, as for design, this market as a whole depends on coherence. And coherence touches on different aspects. What is your narrative around recycling? So what, someone said this in the previous panel, right? Like what people say in public and what they say behind closed doors. What is the best way to understand whether your package works? You have to give Severino a call and ask him. A PET soda bottle. A solid PET is 5 cents if it doesn't get stuck. So is this package friendly, economically and environmentally friendly? If you can develop the technology that can get this colorful PET and transform it into a value-added product, so you have to be coherent, right? What is the product that you're creating? What is the technology that you're using? In 5 years' time, other things will be able to be used, but you have to be compliant. And we need to recognize that Natura, Unilever, L'Oreal are here. These are massive companies that live off of their practices. They are really making an effort to use recycled materials. The brand is very important to them, and you cannot hide the supply chain model that exists today. 80–90% depends on waste pickers. Recycling is based on informal models. And this depends on recircular models. You need trackability and traceability. You need to know who is involved. That's what I worked for. But that can't be a constraint. And you can't say, oh, I will only join if that is all there on day zero. That can't be a requirement. There is a dispersed, complicated chain that we need to understand, disentangle, and work with. We can't keep things as they are. We need to make progress. Wise Plástico has 30,000 tons. The PET bottles, they're doing 100,000 tons in Brazil. Design will change business scale. And as scale comes along, then you'll see that the business models that we have nowadays are no longer enough. We need to make progress, and we need to rope in the waste pickers and other players. We need everyone to be on board so that we're no longer talking about dozens of thousands and we start talking about millions. That's what I had to say. Thank you. Thank you very much, Bruno. Henrique, of course, there are several challenges ahead. But you have a multilateral experience. Can you please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about how this all works on a multilateral level? Thank you, Jorge, Adalberto, Bruno, Severino. It's a pleasure to be on this panel with you. And thank you to the audience. When I was a child, Severino, and I went to the landfill, the dump, close to Barretos, I used to collect cigarette marks. And if you're over 40, you probably know that. And I used to see hospital waste being dumped there, waste from slaughterhouses. And there were cars that would drive by offering these kids, like myself, money for cans. And I never forgot that. That was etched in my memory. And this is something that I see in many countries I visit. I think it's gotten better in Brazil. It's not ideal yet, but it's gotten better. But I have seen mountains and dumps and landfills in India, Bangladesh. We have projects all over the world. My name is Henrique. I work for the UN's trade agency. we work with different countries negotiating and helping countries with the global agreement on waste and pollution. The technical project we work with is called SMAP, Sustainable Manufacturing Environmental Pollution. SMEP has 23 projects all over the world, funded by England. And out of these 23 projects, I think there were originally 30 and 23 are active. At least 10 of those focus on plastic. One of them is represented here by Dr. Ebenezer from the University of Aston in England, where we're trying to replace agri-plastic with biomass or biomass carpets, so to speak, from coconut fiber, and also trying to replace food packaging for fresh fruits such as coconut, pineapple, or mango that are produced by Blue Skies in Marine, but also in Ghana and Accra for the Blue Skies chain, and they are exported to Europe. Polypropylene containers also using algae fiber so that they are water resistant. Speak to Dr. Ebenezer, to Mr. Ebenezer, he's here. We also have a program working on redesigning fishing nets. That's also a problem because they will last 3 to 5 years, the nets, and if they're lost, they can lead to issues in the ecosystem. This is a project called Catch Stream, a collaboration between South Africa and Sweden, and another project that works on biodegradable nets. They will become water and carbon dioxide in 3 to 5 years. And River Cycle is another interesting project that is capturing plastic in rivers to be recycled, also in Ghana and in Accra. And we have 2 projects with natural fibers. They're not in the plastic portfolio, but these are low-impact fibers such as the pineapple fiber or the banana stalk fiber that could be used as textile fibers for clothing or for coffee filters. We work in the plastic segment with database for all over the world, primary and intermediary products such as the PET, plastic, and we have a database that looks at plastic and a database that looks at non-plastic. Natural fibers, ceramics, and so on. These databases are then made available to other countries to help them in negotiations and understanding the pros and cons in there. Design is a very important matter. Design is often very fragmented. We see that many parts of the world are creating water bottles without the polypropylene packaging around it. You have the brand on the bottle itself. I don't know if Severino has seen it before. Communication is very important. Communication about what material is used in the packages, especially when it comes to biodegradable items or renewable plastic materials. There is a consumer protection program that looks at these comparatively. So how is it that you know what is in the packages so that the consumers are informed by the labels?
Also, several other aspects of packaging will be discussed at the Q&A. So this is a core issue, and all countries agree that redesigning plastics is the common ground between those that are more strict and less strict in negotiations. And finally, we'll have more news about the treaty in August. The Secretary has brought us some information about what has been done in the negotiations of the international agreement for eliminating plastics pollution. I prefer to use the full name because many people can mistake, the two things, the international agreement and the United Nations Environmental Program Secretary has been said that this is an agreement for eliminating pollution caused by plastics along its life cycle. And today, the most important information that we receive is that 82 million tons of waste are mismanaged in the world. And since plastics are lighter and more difficult to collect, they end up, unfortunately, to the environment. They go to the environment in an inadequate way. So, what is the logic? And what is the positioning of Brazil in this agreement? Looking to the chain. And also, if you could say a few words about design, it would be great as well. It's very important. I think that Brazil was able to make progress by talking to the different entities involved during the INC, since the second INC in Paris. It was the first one under Lula's administration. I was there with Severino. I was the only one to talk about waste pickers, and in the next INC, 30 countries were talking about the fair transition and waste pickers, so it was very interesting to see. Brazil made great strides, and also in Article 3, 5, and 6, the most difficult ones. Obviously, we focus on 11 and 12, which is implementation, technology transfer, and funding, because in all international treaties, there should be a balance between implementation and funding as well. To just create vetoes and to think that a country will be able to execute and meet all of those commitments without any support, following the principles of the Rio agreement, this is very difficult. So in the last meetings, all European countries and the United States were not willing to give the same focus to Articles 11 and 12. So 3, 5, and 6 were left unresolved. Article 3, particularly, first of all, let's talk about production. This idea of global production peaks and rates are things that probably will not be agreed upon, and even the heads of delegations are really removing this from the agenda. Now, Article 4, problematic plastics, the so-called avoidable and problematic plastics that Brazil wanted to remove. Well, there was, a concern with this. This became a sub-item in problematic plastics, and this is a debate that needs to advance, because if, phthalates and biphenyls are removed, but the other country don't remove, there will be cross-contamination. So it should be a global agreement. Of course, there are many trade issues. Germany, France, and the UK have already eliminated those additives. Now, India, Russia, and the UE, they use other additives, the UAE. So if there's a veto, we will end up having to pay royalties. There are several issues involved. But in the area of problematic plastics, I think that there is consensus about the chemicals. And I think that in the avoidable, non-essential plastics, there is a large number of countries that have vetoed some disposables and some plastics. There is a table, 140 have already, banned, I don't know, straws and plastic bags, but I think it's very unlikely that we'll see a list in an international treaty. I think it's easier to establish criteria and actions, and each of the countries will implement their national plans because there are different conditions. So in Brazil, we have been playing a key role. We are one of the few that talk to like-minded countries such as China, India, and we also talk to the Europeans. So I think that there's still some work to do. We expected that PL 2425 would have advanced by now, but it didn't. So this is homework we are yet to do. Now, speaking of product design, there is Gasseri, this group, together with Ellen McCarthy, and they use ambitious language. They want to make incentives mandatory, but also provide minimum incentives so that product design is minimally controlled. We support this idea. We think it's a very important article to ensure circularity, but at the same time, this will have to undergo local implementation. It's very unlikely that an international treaty will override local laws. So if you follow the CBD on biodiversity, you saw that for the first time, the BRIC countries got together to write a text. So the final proposal on the last day was the BRICS proposal. It was the first time that the BRICS develop a proposal. So since we are able to establish a dialogue with everybody, we were able to really gain the support of China, Arabia, and other countries. So now we have had some meetings about plastics with the chair, so probably we'll have some news soon. Something that's clear, however, is that the treaty will make clear the role of the private initiative, and the treaty will provide clear suggestions on how this should be done by the private sector, whether in design of products or in the bills they have to pay in terms of reverse logistics or responsibility of the manufacturers. So we believe that, yes, the private sector has to pay their part, and certainly this is something that to be expected. However, we believe that we also have a historical responsibility in relation to the pollution that exists, especially coming from the countries that had higher per capita income and use. So Brazil also made a proposal related to the impact on health. This article has survived in spite of India and other countries trying to counter it, but we want to make sure that Article 19 will remain, and it's very relevant. So product design. Whether you consider the national regulation or the debate, this should be the top concern for any logistics and supply chain manager, sustainability and ESG managers, because product design, whether mandatory or not, increases productivity, drives down the impact of packaging, and promotes circularity. So that's why this is so important, and that's why we see more heated debate around these articles. Yes, so private initiative, both locally and globally, understands the importance of this international treaty, everybody will be on the same page and the same level of evolution, as you mentioned, and we are counting on it. We hope that we can close this agreement by August. What do you think, Severino? How do you view the importance of this treaty? You are leading an international alliance. Do you think that we're going to make make consensus to reach this treaty, reach this agreement? So after Severino, I will open the floor for any questions. Could you please load my presentation? Well, this is the International Alliance of Waste Speakers. This is what the International Alliance means. So this is, we have actually more affiliates than this. It's important to understand how pickers work. When you say, oh, in the United States there are no pickers. Of course there are. And so, of course, there are a lot of differences. There are big dumps in Africa. So I wanted to tell you about how representative waste pickers are in INC. Well, luckily, we have a government that understands our importance and knows us. Alex do Sul was the first member who took over, and we found out about this meeting, and a delegation of waste speakers with members from Africa and the United States went there. And then there was this important figure, a Brazilian. It was that, in a transition between governments, and it was Nelsinho from, and they said, Severino, there's a Brazilian here. So this Brazilian member, I've been going to COP since Copenhagen. So, and the focal points was from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and then we got to know Maria Angelica. She's an important advocate of all causes. So, in the diplomats cannot have a side. They cannot take sides, and they listen to everyone, including waste speakers. So I am the only waste speaker who participates. So in the INC of Ottawa, we were the spokesperson. I participate, in the background doing politics. So I talk to the participants, so that people see that Adalberto talks about waste pickers. This is my basis. I am just like a diplomat. I try people see the possibilities in Brazil, and we're lucky because the secretary of the treaty is Brazilian, and she became a great friend of ours. So the relationship between the waste pickers and companies in Brazil is also very important. So why am I saying this? Because I hope that the treaty will be approved because of all of these aspects. Of course, there was a lot of sabotage, and Brazil was able to overcome this. When solid waste producers said, if we don't exist, the waste pickers will go hungry. Or when the NGO said, the waste pickers are being exploited. So in all meetings, all INC meetings with the secretary, we go with our delegation. And it's really amazing because I can speak some English, and we are able to manifest our views. So I say, yes. Because, in the beginning, they wanted to eliminate our names because the ILO legislation and the treaty legislations got mixed. We wanted to just handle everyone in the same way, and the civil organization feel very jealous because the waste pickers became leading actors. It's one thing to be a worker in the eyes of the ILO, another thing to be a worker in the International Plastics Treaty. So why shouldn't I be a priority after all? So it's really a struggle to maintain our name and participation in all treaties. It's a struggle, but we are able to do it. So because of all of these aspects, because of the current government, yesterday I was here in Abiquim, and my comrade was there next to the minister, talking about so it's not only Severino, there are several important actors that are participating in articulating. So when we talk about how important the work of waste pickers are, just imagine what would happen in the world if there were no waste pickers. We would be just up to our necks in waste. So in Geneva, well, I'll go to Geneva next week. My life is chaos. So Silvio Almeida, ambassador of Kenya, opens the doors of the embassy, and we talked to 30 waste pickers from Kenya. In Ottawa, well, the embassy was in renovations. We had a meeting at the hotel. I have the number of the ambassador. And in Busan, well, we don't have a representative consulate, but I am talking to Tovai in Geneva, so to see whether we can make our event. So you're all invited to participate in the waste pickers event. Our responsibility is to represent waste pickers. They are invisible, but they are not poor little things. It's very important to show that the treaty is very important for the environment and for the 30 and 40 million of waste pickers that work in this area. Well, I am a witness. I'm a witness of the importance of waste pickers. Yes, it's undeniable. There are around 1 million people today in Brazil that make their livelihood from this resource. So it makes all sense. Really, appreciating waste pickers is really important. So I now would like to turn the floor over. In fact, let's open for questions from the floor. Okay, I am Karen Cesar. I am ESG head of the Brazilian Association of Design Companies. And as head of an association, we are players and we can help drive the change. So my question is, why aren't designers participating in this conversation, and how can they be engaged? Great question. I think that in this lab, what's the name? Karen, sorry. This lab, this is a design lab. We have designers working here. In fact, I think that we're missing a designer in the panel. Yuri, I think we had this before, didn't we? A designer participating. Yes, okay. I've taken this as feedback for the future. Yes, probably you should be here. So, Kari, no, I want to thank you because Cazoolo, well, on behalf of Fabio and everybody else, we launched the guidebook. It was part of an international publication in the Iberic and American Forum on Design. It was a guidebook that was written by 14 design labs, covering issues that have to be discussed in the initial talks about the creation of packaging. So I think that this partnership, also for brain owners, is a very relevant question. How how design should be seen as something very important in the beginning. We are not only label creators. So how can we bring our category to to the discussion?
And we need to change the value of designers so that it helps in the systemic view. Well, how important design and designers are to strengthen circular economy. And maybe in the next Cazoolo talks, we could do that. We could have a special edition about that. There's another question. Good morning, or rather good afternoon. Thank you for your contributions. Severino, I have a question for you and for Bruno. How can we democratize the knowledge around what can and what can't be recycled? Because civil society would then be able to think about buying things that are more easily recyclable. My name is also Bruno. Bruno, I work for Braskem. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. Well, we need to do that little by little. Society is educated slowly but surely. I'm 50 years old. I'm really old. People would get to the co-op to learn about recycling, and they would open or they would turn on the tap to wash a Tetra Pak with drinkable water, and say, like, you're wasting drinkable water to wash this. And I always say that whenever I give a talk, think about what you're buying, what you're taking home. Is it recyclable? So it's really something that we'll achieve slowly. One way or another, people start having their awareness raised. And we are in the midst of really creating models or ways to collect waste. In Brazil, it's one way. In Latin America, it's similar. When we look at EPR in the United States, it's terrible. If you were in the main room yesterday, you saw that. Portland and Oregon. The way they process it in the machine, it's difficult. And there's no formal market there. So someone picked it, is going to send it to someone is going to buy it per weight. It's not like the Brazilian market. The problem is that the packages are there to service a certain audience, a certain target audience. You won't buy the coconut in the north in a bag because we have fresh coconut there. So people need to understand what they're buying, what they're taking home. Although I can't say I agree with the reverse logistics that we have in Brazil. We're pioneers in reverse logistics in Brazil. And reverse logistics was useful back then because it was good for people to understand what the waste pictures was like. But people need to know what the price or what the cost is of each bottle. But if we hadn't really insisted on being part of the sectorial agreement, then waste pickers wouldn't be represented on a panel like this, for example. And you can go online and find waste pickers speaking about what can be consumed and what can't be. Iron cans are no longer in the market, thanks to us. Kaiser, tens, they were all iron. They were made of iron. And then they had an ad for an iron can instead of an aluminum can. And then they said that iron could be degraded faster than aluminium. And then I said, nope, you're wrong, just compare it. And then, well, we became friends with them. And they said that the energy also to cool iron is a lot higher than to cool aluminium. And we hardly ever see iron beer cans now with, they're all aluminium now. But we still need to raise awareness in society. But it would be great for society to see what is recyclable and what isn't when they're in the supermarket, and people would be willing to pay more for it as they do in Germany. Again, it's important to raise awareness, but it's a slow process. So I'm not sure raising awareness is the main thing that we need to do now. And we need to do it, but I think the main model has to be with companies. We need to address companies. There are several manuals, guidebooks. There are nuances from one place to another. Different cities in the countryside of Bahia or in the main cities. But we know that most of Brazilian population is in a handful of cities, right? So if we can address these regions at least, then we're already doing a lot. We can't say that every plastic is the same. There are several thousands of types of plastic, right? Some can be easily recycled, some can't be recycled at all. We need to go for the approaches that are financially and technically possible. Technically, well, technology will continue to be evolving, but financially we need a push, and it has to do with EPR, right? So there are those horrible milk bottles that were made, and we need to really tap into the consciousness of these companies and how we can work with them better. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to ask one last question. Because we're a bit short for time, but we can have further questions asked in person.
Question in English, if I may, because I don't speak Portuguese. Just very quickly, thank you to the panel. It's been great to hear all the discussions around the treaty. And obviously, when you consider the objectives of the treaty in terms of banning single-use plastics, etc., helping countries or encouraging countries to transition away from single-use plastics, it strikes one that countries, in order for the treaty to be effective, will have to upscale the production of plastic alternatives and non-plastic substitutes. And so my question for the panel is, what guidance, if any, will be provided to countries to help them develop comprehensive policy frameworks to encourage the local production of plastic alternatives and non-plastic substitutes? And if any such guidance will be provided as part of an annex to the treaty, etc., what kind of guidance will it be? Thank you very much.
Tá bem. Adalberto, a pergunta é sobre alternativas para os produtos plásticos, né?
So it's a question mainly about the plastic alternatives, especially those that are problematic, so-called problematic, right? Adalberto, would you like to answer that question?
From biomaterials, Braskem is a leader in producing green plastics. We are also starting to study the life cycle analysis of some of these plastics and some of the substitutes too, because supposedly plastic, for example, PET, have a very good life cycle when you think on the long term because of its recyclability. But if you compare with glass, with paper and others, there might be some of them which could be better on a carbon footprint or on their environment. So what we are doing right now is trying to produce as much data as possible so that we can have enough information to use this on the internal process, this bill in Congress that eventually would ban or phase out some of these options. But personally, I think Brazil is one of the places that we could be producing a lot of these substitutes, especially the bioplastic ones, thinking on the ones that come from sugarcane, but also, plastic that come from mandioca or, any different type of other materials that supposedly they work well. So I think right now the focus is getting innovation. We are working with the Ministry of Science and Technology to have a new bid very soon to open for R&D projects regarding substitutes for single-use plastics. So hopefully we can have this by next year so that we can study a little bit further.
Obrigado, Adalberto. Pessoal, desculpem.
Thank you, Adalberto. This is unfortunately the end of our session. I'd like to give the floor to our panelists for the final remarks. So Henrique, Severino, and Adalberto, I'd like to listen to your final remarks around the importance of design. And we know that circularity touches on so many dimensions, but let's focus on design for this final remarks, shall we? Not only for the audience on site, but online. Product design will determine a number of things that happen after we may fail to see. In Kenya, they adopted a rule to try and make the mix between plastic and organic less complicated. So you needed all the organic waste to be in a biodegradable bag. So we organized workshops with ISO and with other agencies from other countries to try and understand what the appropriate standards are. So let's always think about what we're doing in terms of materials and how that can be communicated on a national and international levels. When I think about conventional plastic, you have plastic that goes from one location to another, one country to another, and there are taxes that will go into one country, but the taxes to fund recycling, they're not going to go into other countries as well. So the extended responsibility of the producer, these taxes are not traveling, they're staying in the country. And this is something that we can think at least to improve it on a regional or global level. That's an excellent point, Henrique. We agree that can really be very helpful. Bruno? This was an excellent discussion. Design is an instrumental subject, and it has to go into regulation. It can't be addressed by each person individually. You can't have the same product by the same manufacturer in a polyethylene and in a PET plastic bottle. And then the waste picker, you say, you just need to look at the bottom of it to see what type of plastic it is. But no, that's not possible. They need to do things on scale. Things have improved a lot in the last 10 years. 10 years ago, people only thought about the way things looked. But we need to really think about the impact that design will cause. It's key for all of the recycling chain. So thank you very much for having me on the panel. It was great. Your final message, Severino, please. We need to continue to be open. Waste pickers need to continue to be part of the discussion. We know our role when it comes to sharing information, and we don't want to have so much material that can't be recycled. We want to play our role and help raise awareness in society and help to have products get to the right, correct destination. We spoke about Coca-Cola bottle and different types of plastic cups, but design has to be one way to make this product better so that you get to a cooperative and the person knows that it can go to the cooperative and it will be better and it can be reused. Environmentally friendly design is absolutely key for circular economy. A focus on product design has to be there. We need to open channels with the government so that we can create products that have a better life. And we need to make sure that we have recyclability, and we need to think about the different layers of products and how they could make things easier. And the products need to be easily dismantled. Pieces need to be removed and replaced. We no longer have the right to fix things. If you have any minor problem with your mobile phone, you can't fix it. You need to buy a new one. And this can't be the case. So design is the most important item and the most often neglected item. So I'm very happy to be part of a debate like this. We're calling it eco-design, environmentally friendly design, and we want to make more progress there. But that will help standardize packages. I mean, consumers should look at things and understand easily what they have in their hands. Because you may see, hey, there's PVC in this package, I don't want it then. We need to show things clearly. I think it's easier for glass, I reckon. I mean, we could have the same package for many types of drinks, and if we standardized it. And we need to distance ourselves from the single-use plastic to at least 3-5 times use plastic, and for that we'll need investment. And then we need the containers to be washed and revamped. So I'm very happy. I had never been to Cazoolo, and I'd like to take a tour. But thank you very much for having me. Thank you, everyone. Let's give them a hand. Thank you for joining us online and in person. And let's visit Cazoolo and learn more about it. Have a great day. Thank you, everyone.